And welcome back to another episode of Life Changing Challengers. I have Christian Espinosa with me today. He is an author, he's an entrepreneur, and you know what? The guy's an adventurer, and we're going to get into all that cool stuff that he did a little bit later. But he has two books out, The Smartest Person in the Room and The In Between, and we'll talk about those in a little bit. But first of all, Christian, how you doing?
I'm doing well.
Hey, Christian, can you tell us a little bit about your childhood? Where you grew up, what was the complement of your family, and what was it like to be Christian as a kid?
I grew up in Riverside, California. It's like a suburb of LA with a stepfather and my mother. I never really knew my real dad. And it was very chaotic. My mother was addicted to drugs and pain meds and, lots of other things. So it was a very chaotic environment. The cops come in all the time. And ended up moving to Arkansas, a small town called Knoxville, Arkansas. So population 800 people after California. So my mother could be closer to my grandmother because she was kind of, dependent. And that was quite a culture shock. Imagine going from California to a small town of 800 people.
Right.
So I was picked on quite a bit, called the city boy and all that. And things just got worse. We ended up moving to a single wide trailer. We're on welfare, food stamps, government cheese, all that. And like I said, it was very chaotic. So I didn't have any safety or stability or security growing up. My mom's friends would steal my stuff, and like I said, ended up living with my grandparents my senior year of high school, so I could focus on school. And I knew that this was not the environment I wanted to become a product of early on. I worked hard in school to get a scholarship, so I was number 2 in my class. We moved to Clarksville, Arkansas, which had like 5,500 people. So I was number 2 in the class, all state football and everything else. And I ended up getting a lot of scholarships. I got more scholarships than my entire class combined from a monetary perspective, and got like a standing ovation in my graduation. So that was kind of cool.
Nice. So did you get those, were they all academic? Was some of them partial athletic? Were they some sort of extracurricular? Were they a combination of all of it? What were
Yeah,
some of
I
the
literally applied for every type of scholarship or grant I could get. I got like the Pell Grant for being poor. I got a football scholarship to Notre Dame. I had a football scholarship to a couple other places and some academic scholarships. I got accepted to all 3 military academies as well. Ironically, the last game of my senior year in football, I tore 3 ligaments in my knee, including my MCL. So my football scholarship was kind of off the table. I could have probably played football, but I didn't want to risk messing my knee up permanently. I had a screw in my knee to reattach my ligament. And I lost my scholarship to the Air Force Academy too, which is where I ended up going. So I had to work super hard to rehabilitate my knee and pass the physical to get my acceptance regranted to the Air Force Academy, which is where I chose to go.
Wait a second. Hold on a second. So let me get this straight. So I get that you lost your football scholarship, but that sucks that it was the last game of the season. Holy moly. I mean, you can't get any worse than that. And oh man, I can't imagine what that felt like. But the fact that you got accepted and got scholarships to all 3 military schools and you lost your scholarship to the Air Force Academy, but you decided to go anyway.
Yeah, I had to, when they found out about my knee, they like put my scholarship in like a status where it was not quite approved. I had to rehabilitate myself and prove I was rehabilitated physically. So that's what I did. I would run bleachers with my knee like hurting severely to rehabilitate my knee. I would take ice baths every night because my knee was hurt so badly, but I got my knee back in shape.
So you got the scholarship, but wait a second. If you get accepted to military school, isn't there actual like tuition? I thought that you just owed them 5 years afterwards.
There's like an initial tuition, I think, of like a couple $1,000, but yeah, there's really no tuition. You get paid like $50 a month as a freshman or something. You owe 5 years, 5 years active duty, 8 years total. So that would include 3 years in the reserves afterwards.
Right. So yeah, I'm 9.5 years in the United States Army. So yeah, and then the initial contract was 8 years. You had to do at least 4, and then 4 years, 4 years IRR. And after 2 years of my IRR, they called me back. So
Oh, really?
yeah,
It's
because
pretty rare to call someone back from IRR.
right, it was 2003.
Oh, okay.
Yes. 2003 got called back, and even though and then when I was done, when I actually had the contract was over, they called a stop loss, so they didn't let anybody go.
Oh,
So
yeah.
yeah, so that was interesting, but it was good. I enjoyed the time that I had in the military. So how did you like the Air Force Academy?
I didn't like it because I went from that chaotic environment where I kind of made my own decisions, and I was really the parent for my mother, and she ended up divorcing my stepfather. But I didn't like it because all of a sudden I went to a very structured, like over the top structured environment
Yeah.
where I was getting yelled at all the time and told what to do all the time, and I couldn't respond other than like the 7 responses you can only do. So at first I didn't like it. Once I got to like build some friendships and things, it kind of grew on me. But it was like this bittersweet, it was a way to get out of my environment, a way to like become disciplined, a way to start a career, even though it's in the military, a way to do some cool things like jump out of airplanes and fly gliders and things like that, go through survival training, which I like those aspects of it. I just didn't like the traditional hazing where upperclassmen could harass you all year for a year. It's like a year of basic training, basically.
Right. Right. Yeah. And I wouldn't know a year of it. Obviously, I went through the rate, basically the basic and the AIT, and you got some RASM while you were there, but it wasn't like what you went through, not for a year. So do they, does everybody do the same thing in the military academy? Do you have some sort of like major?
Traditional college in that sense, you pick a major. So I majored in electrical engineering. I wanted to fly. I also joined the military because I watched Top Gun. I know that's Navy, but that got me hooked on flying jets. So I wanted to fly jets for the Air Force. I didn't want to live on an aircraft carrier. And unfortunately, 2 years before I graduated, they cut like all the pilot slots. So I decided not to pursue it after I got an active duty.
Man, I know how that felt. Matter of fact, after Top Gun, I was a sophomore in high school. Begged my parents to send me to this military school down here in Florida called the Florida Air Academy. Basically was a boarding school where you learn to fly while you're in high school. And I did that exactly like you said. After I saw Tom Cruise in Top Gun, I'm like, oh, I want to fly jets.
Yeah, I think that was one of the best recruiting movies for the military.
Oh yeah. No, no, no. It was super cool. Yeah, I bet that's why all the slots were taken by the time you got there, because all those guys that saw Top Gun were like, I want to fly. Well, that's awesome. So, what kind of units were you in as an electrical engineer?
So my AFSC or my career choice was communications. So I ended up doing communications. A couple of aspects of that, I helped protect like secret networks from the enemy. Help make sure that our secrets were secret. I worked on deployable communications. So when a forward deployed unit was sent to the field, they had a portable Inmarsat satellite dish they could set up and get network communications as well.
Oh, well, now everything's starting to make sense. The research that I've done on you is now starting to already take shape. So, and I'm not going to spoil it, everybody. So, we're going to get there. But yeah, interesting enough. So, I went into the military basically because I didn't really know what I was going to do. I'd already gotten a degree, and I basically went in because I found out that I could literally pay off all $65,000 of loans that I had in 3 years. And I was like, oh, well, when I put the numbers back together and I've thought, okay, if I get those 3 years and I add that back, then add the taxes and everything else, I would have had to make like $125,000 a year in order to make that. And I'm like, well, I'm never going to get a job making that right out of college.
Right.
But I essentially will be making that, if you really put everything, back to pen and paper, added taxes back and the whole bit. So I was like, well, this is a great thing. So I ended up doing that. And the interesting part is, even though my MOS was something totally different, they recognized that I had worked with computer systems before I went in. So I got put on that like immediately and ended up going into the Pentagon and putting in a backbone for the Army's human resources information system
Oh, nice.
into the E-ring.
Yeah.
And that led me, and and they kind of like threw it at me. It was like, here's all the stuff. This is what needs to happen. Go. No one had ever done anything like that before. So I had to work with a bunch of different people. And basically, I didn't know how to organize it. So I tumbled on to PMI, the Project Management Institute,
Oh, yeah.
and learned. And that's what I've been doing and to make money for the last 20 some odd years. So, like you, right?
That's awesome. Yeah, I'm a certified project manager from PMI. I think I may have let it lapse.
Yeah.
PMP. I'm a PMP. I forgot to do my annual payment or one of my credits or something. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Project
Very
manager.
useful skills though, for sure.
Yeah. We're here to talk about you. So, talk to me about, tell me about like your favorite, can you give me your favorite memory of being in the Air Force?
Probably my favorite memory was actually in free fall school, jumping out of airplanes. Because I love the movie Point Break as well, where they jump out of planes. So that's one of my favorite movies. And yeah, I got to jump out of planes. It wasn't with modern parachutes. It was the round ones where you have to do a PLF or parachute landing fall, and you land like super hard, and you could break your nose and other things if you don't land properly. But that was one of my favorite memories. It was really thrill seeking for me. That, and I also really enjoyed, mainly in hindsight, but I went through SERI, survival, evasion, resistance, escape, and going through like torture, interrogation training. All that was exciting as well. But that was exciting in a different way than skydiving or jumping out of planes, actually.
That's cool that you got the free fall in the Air Force. I got static line. So, yeah, obviously PLF, brown parachute, same thing. I did do free fall later on in life, tandem, then AFF, and the whole bit. So I did get to do that. That was fun. So you got certified while you were in the Air Force?
I did the 5 jumps in the Air Force Academy and got my free fall badge. You wear a uniform.
Mhm.
And then probably like 5 years after I got in the military, I went and got certified at a drop zone. I went to AFF. I got my A license, my B license, and my C license.
Cool. Nice. 'Cause that's 20 jumps all to get up to that point.
That's to get
200 jumps. A license is the 20.
A
That's
license
right.
is 20 jumps.
Yeah, because I ran out of money trying to get to 20.
Yeah, I'd like to get my D license now because I want to jump in Dubai, but you have to have a D license to jump in Dubai because you're jumping over water, so they want to make sure you have a D license.
Nice. So did you only spend 5 years in the Air Force?
I spent about 6 total
Okay.
active duty, not counting the 4 years of college.
So what'd you do when you got out?
I became a defense contractor. So I basically took a job at the building across from where I worked active duty and traded my uniform for civilian clothes and worked in kind of the same environment. And in that job, I traveled to Air Force bases in Europe to help secure their networks and optimize their networks as well. So I traveled incessantly.
Oh my God, that's so cool. Now, at this point in time, are you married now?
I just got married on November 21st and just celebrated my honeymoon. Dubai and Abu Dhabi last month. So yeah,
Was that your first marriage?
it's my second marriage. I got divorced in 2002.
Okay. Did that kind of start when you got out of the military?
I got the military in 99. So it was a few years after I got the military.
Okay.
And that's when I went back to the drop zone after I got divorced. I'm like, okay, I'm free to do whatever I want. I'm going to go freaking skydive. I'm going to go scuba dive. I'm going to sign up for triathlons, go all in on things since I don't have anybody else.
So that became your adventurer time, right?
When I was married, there's always like, well, that's too risky or we don't want to pay for that sort of thing going on. When you divorce, it's not easy. It wasn't easy for me. So I needed something to look forward to and something to work on. And I found that in skydiving, primarily skydiving. And later I found it in Ironman, triathlon, and scuba diving. But to me, that's not as exciting as Ironman or skydiving.
Well, you don't have to tell me about Ironmans, but we're gonna definitely have to discuss it because that's my bread and butter right there. So I mean, I can't say enough about the company. I do have some issues with the company, but that's not about this. So, well, then I gotta ask then. So you get out of the military, and you end up unfortunately getting divorced, and you start jumping, and then which I think that's a good thing, right? It's to put your mind somewhere else, get you moving, and get past this. It's a hard thing. Any kind of relationship that ends is hard. It's tough. What got you into triathlon? What was the driving factor?
A bet. So one of the guys I traveled to Europe with all the time, he was on my team, was a major smack talker. And he signed up for this triathlon at Scott Air Force Base in Illinois, where we were based out of. It was an Olympic distance. And he's like, talking so much smack, and he bet me he could beat me. So I was like, all right, we'll see. And I didn't even know how to spell triathlon. I didn't know how to swim. I didn't have a bike, but I was like determined to beat that guy. So I bought the book Total Immersion, kind of learned how to swim by cramming it in. I borrowed somebody's is a Panasonic bike with like the shifters on the top tube
Yeah.
that clipped on aero bars, and tried to practice running barefoot, or not barefoot, but without socks on. I got major blisters a couple days before the race. I tried all the things, but I ended up beating him. And after that, I was like, this kind of cool. It gives me a purpose to train, because before I just go to the gym and lift weights, or do random things to try and look good and stay fit. But after that race, I was like, man, I kind of enjoy the training. I have 3 things I can work on, and I signed up for another triathlon, and then it just kind of kept signing up for them, and then went from Olympic to half distance, and then finally made the jump to full Ironman. There's nothing between half and full, so it's like a big jump. But yeah, I made that jump, and then ended up doing 24 Ironmans, including the World Championship, and yeah,
You went to Kona?
went to Kona in 2015. When I first got into it, I think I started doing triathlons in 2002. That bet was in 2005. I went to the Ironman to watch it, the World Championship in Kona, and I stood under the finish line. And I have a picture of myself under the finish line in Kailua, Kona. And I told myself someday I'm going to do that race. And exactly 10 years later, I actually finished the race, crossing the finish line.
Holy moly, that's amazing. There's one thing to like now you've got 2 ways to get there. Well, you got 3 ways to get there. You can do charity, you can qualify, or you can do legacy, legacy, and then well, I guess there is another way. There's lottery. So there's the regular lottery and there's a legacy lottery. Legacy lottery is if you got to do 12, right? And then you get into legacy. But you actually qualified.
No, I did the legacy program.
You did legacy lottery?
I'm not super fast, so yeah,
So
I did the legacy program.
Okay, then nothing wrong with that. You did 24 freaking Ironmans. That's ridiculous. I was supposed to do my 6th just this last year, but 2 days before I was supposed to leave, I got COVID.
Oh no.
Yeah, it was devastating. I'm still actually in my head about it, and I'm like slowly digging myself out, but that's neither here nor there. And we've covered this, but I just want to let people know that an Ironman is 2.4 mile swim. You jump out of the water, you jump onto your bike, and you ride for 112 miles. After the 112 miles, you jump off your bike, and then you do a marathon of 26.2 miles. This is nothing to shake a stick at. This isn't something that you could train for a few weeks and then decide to do, right? This is a commitment. And an Ironman, that is commitment as far as staying fit. So 24. So did you end up doing, once you got to that point of that distance, did you end up like doing 2 or 3 a year?
The year at Kona, I did 3 in a 6-week period, which you're not supposed to do. I did Lake Tahoe. I did Muskoka in Canada. And then I found out I got the Ironman World Championship slot. So then I did that one as well after Lake Tahoe. So Muskoka, Lake Tahoe, and then the World Championship. I had to have my bike shipped. I never got my bike back from the first race. I just had it shipped to the second race. So the second race I had it shipped to Kona.
Oh my God.
Transport, yeah.
The Iron Cowboy would be very proud of you.
I'm not.
I know I've met James Lawrence before he did the Iron Cowboy. I met him at Augusta and we were just hanging out and we were just both doing a shakeout bike before the race. And I met this guy and I just happen to remember he was a cool guy and I thought he was cool looking, he had the beard and the whole bit and he looked fast. So we were like riding, we just happened to be doing it at the same time. So I met him, shook his hand, and that was it. This was before he was anything. And then all of a sudden he shows up on television as the Iron Cowboy. I was like, holy crap, I know this guy. Well, I mean, I was an acquaintance, but I did meet him. Good guy. I mean, just totally great guy. One of my best friends who I've trained with for years and years and years, about 10 years, her name's Maria. She's going to Kona this year.
Okay.
She qualified and she's going to Kona this year. She kind of did the same thing that you did. She did California and she didn't go to the roll down because she was 16th. She ended up being 16th in her age group. She's like, there's no way I'm getting the roll down. She should have stayed.
Yeah,
because she would have gotten it because it was that late. 3 weeks later, she goes, okay, I'm just going to go do Mexico and I'm going to do Mexico and then I'm going to stay for it. And then she ended up getting the roll down. So she's going and I'm going to go and support her. So that'll be my picture at the finish line for me to say, I'm going to go. Right. So that I'm going to take your lead on that. And that's exactly what I'm going to do.
Are they co-ed again in one day now?
Which is, I was thinking about I was going to go balls to the wall and see if I can get it this year so I could go with her.
Yeah.
I would have had to go to France.
Yeah. I
don't want to go to France.
I went and did Chattanooga the half a couple years ago, and then I went to Coeur d'Alene with a couple people I was helping train, and they were practically giving away slots to Nice, to France. I mean, you could have, if you just finished in your age group, you would have got a slot. Nobody wanted to go. Everyone wanted to wait to go to Kona. No, nobody wants to go to France for the World Championship.
So I'm hoping that that's what they're going to end up doing. 1 year they tried it to where they did men on Saturday and women on Sunday.
Yeah.
And that was cool. But that means closing the roads in Kona for 2 days instead of just one.
Yeah.
That's where they decided.
One day.
But there was something about, I don't know if it was like too crowded or what, but they did it for years and years and years before they decided to split it up.
Well, they try to cram more people into it to make more money.
That's part of it. Yeah, that's absolutely part of it. So, but I think what happened was the 70.3 World Championships really got a good response from the idea of doing men on one day and women on the other. And they got a great response. So they thought they were going to do the same thing with Kona. But then obviously Kona said, well, I can't have the streets closed for 2 days. So that's when they decided, okay, we'll flip flop and sometimes you'll do Nice and sometimes you'll do Kona. But like you said, people aren't crazy about going to Nice.
It all starts in Hawaii. So
and seriously, I'm the same way, right? I was gonna go balls to the wall and see if I can knock it out. And I was gonna train my butt off and get there at the last second so I could go with her. And then I remembered, I'm like, well, no, you're not gonna go because it's switched off and you don't want to go to Nice. So I'm gonna move it to next year. So, but yeah, anyway. But I think I'm for 24 of them. Oh, you did the one time that they put Coeur d'Alene back on the map for a full. Because they had pulled that for a long time. Oh, you did it
before. I tried to do all of it in North America. I did Los Cabos before they took that one off the map, as well as Muskoka. That only lasted, I think, the year I did it. So yeah, I've done a lot of them that were only like 1 year.
Yeah, Muskoka wasn't easy.
That's why they took it off.
Yeah.
I fortunately got that one. And the first year I went there, they canceled it like 5 minutes before the start because of the smoke. The fire.
I had friends there. Yeah, that did the same thing. They were sitting there and they were just like, everybody was in their wetsuits ready to start. And then they called it. Oh my God. That's gotta be hell. Wow. So, all right. You know what? Doing an Ironman it's not exactly cheap. Even back then, I did my first in 2011. It was still just to do the race. It was over $600. So you've got to, I mean, that's a lot of money. That's then a bike, then everything else. That's a lot of, what were you doing, during that point in time? I know you said you were a defense contractor, but did you end up doing something else afterwards? Because that's something that, I don't know if you do that. I'm a defense contractor.
A commercial company as a VP of security products. So it was a 9-to-5 job. I mean, it's more than 9 to 5, but a typical corporate type job. So I was making good money there. And then after that, I became a freelancer or solopreneur. So I kind of controlled my own income stream as much as I wanted to work, as little as I wanted to work. And then after that, I started my first cybersecurity business, which was way more demanding on my time than I thought it would be.
Oh, right. No, I get it. That's life. And it's getting to that point as an entrepreneur. Obviously the first few years are probably kind of light, right?
Yeah.
As far as income goes. So let's step back and let's look at the timeline real quick. So, all right. So how long did you spend doing defense contracting?
I did that for probably 6 years.
Okay. And then defense contracting, then you moved to corporate.
Then I took a job where I helped test aircraft. So my job was to hack into commercial aircraft and military aircraft to make sure they were safe from hackers. So make sure somebody couldn't plug a USB port into the in-flight entertainment system and take over the cockpit and control the plane. So that was my job to make sure these aircraft were secure.
So cool. As a fellow nerd, I'm like, yeah, that is the coolest thing in the world. So you were ethical hacking aircrafts.
Yep. Yeah. Pretty much every type of commercial aircraft. Yeah.
So we basically have you to thank for us being safe up there in the air from hackers, even though we've had some incidents, but basically we have got you to thank.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can imagine.
For a specific model of aircraft or company, yes, that makes the aircraft.
That's crazy. I mean, I can't even imagine that. What was it? Was it literally you would go to work and you would like sit next to an aircraft and plug in and plug out and just sit at the keyboard and try and get yourself into the computer system? Was that basically your day?
So there's multiple stages of it. A lot of the testing was in the lab. So they had a lab that was set up exactly like the aircraft. So we would test in the lab, and then we would have to do on-ground tests and in-air tests, witnessed by an FAA administrator or FAA person. So yeah, on the ground, you'd go find the secret Ethernet port, try to plug stuff into the IFE, the in-flight entertainment. In the air, do the same thing and hope that whatever you're doing is not going to cause a plane to crash. So yeah, we already tested that stuff in the lab, so we knew it shouldn't work in the air. But yeah, tested it in the lab, on the ground, and in the air.
Okay. So while you were in the air, did you ever have a point where you got in?
No.
You were just too good because you got it done in the ground.
Well, yeah, we identified things on the ground, but aircraft are divided up. There's like the aircraft control domain, which is isolated from like the information domain, which is isolated from like the in-flight entertainment domain. So these things are not supposed to be interconnected. There is like a one-way feed, which was a point of entry from the aircraft control domain to the passenger domain. So if you look at your in-flight entertainment system, you can see like the flight path and like the cockpit view and the altimeter. That's where that feed comes from.
That's cool. That's something else. I imagine a lot of people would probably think about that. So I got to ask, so the downsides, is there a lot of documentation that you had to do while you're out there? Or did you were able to have somebody else do that for you?
The client typically did most of the documentation, but I had to review all the documentation and create this spreadsheet with what page, what paragraph needed to be updated, and what the suggested updates were. And
Okay.
very, very lengthy documents.
That's the only thing about my job that I could go without. I love talking to people. I love scheduling everything out. I love getting to the end. I love having to plot the path to get there. But actually sitting down and writing up narratives on how to do the whole thing so the execs understand, that could go. So I get it. So, oh man, you started this company. And so that you said it was your first company. So did you end up selling that?
Yeah, I started my first cybersecurity company in 2014 and sold it in 2020 to a publicly traded company.
You said your first, so that means you started another one.
Yeah, my second one is Blue Goat Cyber. We focus on medical device cybersecurity.
What made you decide to go into medical device cybersecurity?
With my first company, I made every mistake I think you can make. I paid a lot of dumb tax, as they like to say. I thought everybody needs cybersecurity. So I tried to sell cybersecurity to everybody, which meant my marketing, my messaging was very diluted. We ended up getting a medical device contract for the big medical device manufacturer in St. Louis, which is where I lived at the time. And I just thought, this is a niche I want to focus on. So I sold the company, and the parent company didn't have a lot of interest in medical device cybersecurity. And while I was working for that parent company, I worked for them for a while. I developed 6 blood clots in my left leg and almost died. So thanks to a portable Doppler ultrasound, a medical device, I was quickly diagnosed, and I'm still here. So after like a year of depression and blood thinners and sedentary lifestyle, I decided to reclaim my life. And once I made the decision, I started Blue Goat Cyber. And I thought, I need to focus on medical devices, because if it wasn't for one, I may not be here.
And there you go. That is like the epitome of what we're about. Adversity. You ended up with 6 blood clots, which we're actually going to dig into here in a minute. And then instead of, obviously there's always going to be an emotional period about that. But then you took that and decided, well, I'm going to do something with it. And then now you've got a successful company that you're running. You had a couple of books, which we'll talk about here in just a few minutes. Let's step back. You got 6 blood clots. What was the symptoms about you finding out about this? What started happening?
I was still training for Ironman. This was during COVID. So they kept talking about having one, but you have to get tested and all this stuff. So I was training, and I had just done 120 burpees and some core work and a few other things. And then the back of my left leg, like behind my knee, started hurting. And I thought I just pulled a muscle.
Mhm.
But I was talking to a friend of mine on the phone, and she is like this intuitive, in touch person. And she's like, you probably have blood clots. I'm like, whatever. I'm like an Ironman triathlete. I don't get blood clots. But she made me promise to go to the hospital. So I went to the hospital, and I was diagnosed with 6 blood clots in my lower left leg.
Now, when you have a blood clot, the problem with that is that if it releases itself, it could end up going through the blood system into your brain, right?
It can go to your brain and cause you to have a stroke, or it can go to your lungs and cause a pulmonary embolism. Those are the 2 main widow makers, as they like to say.
Oh my God. So you get to the hospital, they diagnose you via an ultrasound.
Mhm.
And then the prognosis we know. What was the care? What was the care plan for that?
The care plan, as they told me, was, here's some blood thinners, take them right now. Here's a prescription. Don't run, don't exercise, don't travel, don't do anything that might cause one of these clots to break off. That was the care plan. So I went from very active, traveling all the time, to, and they even told me, don't even get in a hot tub, because that could cause one to break off. So, I'm not really a hot tub kind of person, but I was like, I couldn't go on a hike, I couldn't go on a run, I couldn't do anything. And my leg progressively got worse to where my foot was numb. I couldn't really feel it for a while. But yeah, all the things I thought I liked to do, that I did. I remember sitting in my car and just starting kind of like crying and thinking, man, my life is over. I can't do anything that I like to do, you know? So it was about a year of that.
A year. So you mentioned that you kind of fell into depression.
Yeah, at first, I was taking the blood thinners, and then I quit my parent company because there was a bunch of issues with that, about selling the stock and misalignment with values. So I quit the parent company. And now I had a pre-existing condition, so I couldn't get insurance, which was very frustrating. So I was paying like $600 or $700 a month for these blood thinners. Uh, and the whole scenario was very frustrating for me. At first I was like grateful. Okay, I'm alive. But then, like, the world started closing in. I started feeling trapped and caged, and just like, this is not how I want to live my life. I feel like I'm existing, but not thriving, not doing the things I want to do. So it took me quite a while to get out of that, but I guess I had enough, because one day I was looking at the bottle of blood thinners and I threw them across the room. And I'm like, I'm done with these freaking things. I scheduled a blood test to get literally every possible test on your blood done. I got all of them done. I went and got another Doppler ultrasound. Nothing was wrong with my blood. There are no clots in my leg. So I'm like, you know what? I'm not taking thinners from this day on, and I'm reclaiming my life. And once I made that decision, it's like other things fell into place. My relationship improved and everything else in my life improved for that one decision, which took a long time for me to get to.
And that's a decision right there. And that's where a lot of us, we have that issue with the fear starts that. And that's was basically what I'm thinking is that you had the fear that I'm never gonna be where I was. I'm never gonna be that guy again. And then finally you're like, all right, no more fear. I'm retaking this. I'm done. I'm taking this. Let me make sure that I'm okay. And then no holds barred. I'm done. And it took that year to get through that. Well, that is the epitome of what we talk about here. So tell me about you writing The Smartest Person in the Room.
That was a result of my first company. My company was in cybersecurity. And 99% of my problems when I kind of zoomed out were because my staff lacked emotional intelligence. They were super high rational intelligence or high IQ, but super low EQ. And what the defining moment for me was when one of my teammates was telling me how a report review session with a client, and this is one of my best penetration testers or ethical hackers, he kept telling me that the client just didn't get it. And for some reason, it struck me very differently when he said that. Like, I'm like, well, this is our client. If they don't get the results of our ethical hack against them and how to fix it, they're not going to fix it. So after that moment, I'm like, I got to solve this problem. So I changed the culture of my company. Every Thursday, we did training for an hour and a half. And I developed that emotional intelligence in my company. And that's what I wrote about in the book is the 7 steps that worked to develop that emotional intelligence.
Beautiful. But what made you decide to put it down on pen and paper? Well, a typewriter, whatever.
I went to this I call it a Genius Network event. It's here in Phoenix area. It's an entrepreneur event. You had to have a business with over $1 million of revenue. And I've always had this problem where I feel like I'm not good enough. I haven't done enough. So I remember going to this event and 50% of the people I spoke with at this event had books. So I'm like, why the hell don't I have a book? I have things to say. So after that event, I decided to write a book and capture the lessons I learned in my first business. And that's what I did. And then after that book, I decided I want to write a second book.
So The Smartest Person in the Room, the root cause and new solution for cybersecurity. And that covers the 7 steps to help your company get to an EQ level where they can communicate with your clients.
Correct. Yeah. It's really about in cybersecurity, the typical personality type thinks they're smarter than everybody else because we all want to be significant. In cybersecurity, it's like significance is I'm smarter than other people and they're just stupid. That's how it shows up predominantly. And then the ego does all it can to protect this identity you've made up for yourself. So some of the ways it protects itself is by talking over people's heads. If you talk over someone's head, they don't understand it, makes you feel like smart. Like, oh, they don't understand what I'm saying. They must be stupid. If you listen to your teammate and find an opportunity to like snap and show the deficiencies in their idea, that makes you feel smart and them stupid. So these things were constantly showing up in my industry and they still constantly show up. And I thought, this is like really hurting the whole industry, especially when people say, I can't get the budget or they can't stand talking to the cybersecurity people. So I thought if I can like shift the industry somehow towards developing some emotional intelligence, then I will help the industry as a whole because I was like kind of teeter-tottering, being so fed up with the industry. I was like, almost just said, screw it. I'm leaving cybersecurity. I can't stand all these people trying to intellectually bully me or prove that they're smarter than me all the time. It's very exhausting.
And just to give everybody an idea what we're talking about, I'm going to ask Christian a question, and that question is going to tell you what he's talking about. Christian, can you tell me when coders started becoming popular, what were most of their passwords? What
Um,
was their password?
is it the one about
There's only,
God?
it's it.
Yeah.
So that tells you right there what he's talking about. If they had the gall, the narcissism to have their password be
Some
God,
still do. That hasn't changed.
then you got
I
to
mean,
see
they're
what
forced
he's
to have better
talking about.
passwords, but the mindset hasn't changed.
Right. Right. So that's what I'm saying, though. So, and the idea that you knew that, you know what I mean? I knew I could ask you that question and you would know what it was, especially being in cybersecurity.
Yeah, I work with a lot of software developers. I'm used to manage software developers, so I'm very,
Yep.
very aware of it.
I have numerous of my projects. So, I basically work like you did, and I still, well, not anymore. This is the second full-time. I'm actually a full-time employee. I rarely have been a full-time employee. The 22 years I've been in project management. And this is my second time, but most of the time it was, okay, you're going to do this project for 3 years, and someone's going to hire you to be managed for this project for a couple of years, and this one for 3 months, and this one for 9 months, and this, you know what I mean? So it was like that my whole career. This is the first time I'm actually a full-time employee, and they probably would have hired me as a contractor, but they just changed their model to where they're now just hiring them all outright.
Okay.
Like literally, like the person that sits next to me is still a contractor,
Oh,
and
really?
they're in the midst of negotiating his contract so that they can bring him on board as a full-time employee. So yeah, they're literally doing that right now. But it's a law firm, and it's a global law firm. They've been around since 1907. So
Oh,
they're huge, they're gigantic. So they want to have people onboarded. There's a lot of legal aspects to having an employee versus a contractor,
yep.
which is safer. So, but that's neither here nor there. Um, so. This is definitely, and as we're talking, as you and I are discussing the ins and outs of the IT industry with both software developers, cybersecurity testers, cybersecurity developers, and testers, and penetration testers, and ethical hackers. You've got LAN developers, you've got cloud application developers, you've got, all these people, and they all have pretty much the same issue. A lot of them really love to be heads down into the keyboard, headphones on, Mountain Dew ready, you know.
Hoodie off.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah, you know what I mean? It's typical, and them and getting that same rush of being the smartest person in the room. Just like, so I think this book it's still relevant, and I think it is a must if you are in IT and you feel like that you are, that you're talking over people, and you're basically, if you have that example where you're talking to a client and he doesn't understand what you're saying, I think you need to read this book. Um, what talk to me about the in between.
The in between is a focused memoir about where I've got things right and where I've got things wrong in context of this challenge I've had in my life where I've been consumed or hyper focused on a macro goal, a big goal. And often I got so focused on the macro goal with these blinders on, like I have to achieve this at all costs, that there were costs. The costs were those micro moments right in front of me, those small moments that I ignored because I was too busy training to climb a mountain or training for Ironman or whatever, building a business. And relationships fell apart. My health suffered some, so I wrote the book to point out where I think I've got it right and where I've got it wrong, but also to remind me and anyone else that's a high achiever that's hyper focused on these macro level goals that showing up with intention in the moment right in front of you can really help you in your life, because life is a collection of these small moments. And what I've found is when I was chasing those big goals, kind of like Ironman in the World Championship is a good example. It took me 10 years to get there, but as soon as I was done, I was thinking about the next big goal. I never even like congratulated myself for something that took 10 years. And I was like, man, this is like my own rat race I'm in. I'm just like chasing one big goal after another and not really feeling fulfilled. I feel like I'm not good enough still, which is ironic. So yeah, it's about bringing that balance back into play, and yeah, showing up with that intention in the small moments. And because what I realized now, now that I had the blood clots, the whole journey, I did a half Ironman in Chattanooga, like a comeback race. But I thought, I don't really need to do a full Ironman anymore. I'm okay with who I am. And when I paid attention to the small moments, they informed me that, you don't really have to go prove yourself and do another Ironman, because I wanted to. But then then I paid attention to things. I'm like, for what reason, really, at this point?
I, as a coach, I would have said the best reason that you would have had, the best reason I would have said because you wanted to. I think that's the biggest reason. I think that's the only reason why you should be doing things, if because you wanted to. And that's just me, and that's how I coach. You know what I mean? Like I don't, I take on a lot of bucket listers. Like I literally, my roster just fell by like 6 or 7 people, because most people. I live in Tampa, Florida. Um, I used to live in Phoenix, by the way, just so you know. But I live in Tampa, and right down the street, just an hour and a half away, not even an hour and a half, is Disney World. And just this last weekend, there's what we call it's Disney Marathon Weekend. And basically they do on Thursday, they do a 5K. On Friday, they do a 10K. On Saturday is the half marathon, and on Sunday is the marathon. Now, if you do all 4 races, it's called the Dopey Challenge. If you just do the half and the full, it's called the Goofy.
Okay.
Right? And I've done all 4 of them. The Dopey I've done about 5 times. I've done the Goofy like 7 or 8. And so I get bucket listers who want to do their first marathon. Most of the time it's for full marathon. So I get them in September. They get onto my roster, and then on January they leave the roster. That's my business model. I do it by the race. I have habitual racers just like you, right? My habitual racers. I've got a habitual racer that's been on my roster for like 7 years.
Oh wow.
So and he loves it, but he does them because he wants to, and that's
Yeah.
what I say to people. I'm like, that's the truest, purest form of the sport. Is that you do the race because you want to. Part of it, one of your races might be to get yourself ready for the race you want to do, right? Training race. That's what we do. That's why you and I, we do sprints in Olympics, to get us ready for the halves and the fulls, right? So, we get that way, but most of the time that's the purest form. I get what you're saying, right? That was that I think is the second guess, is that you want to do it, but you have nothing to prove to yourself or to anybody else.
And I'll do it like later when I feel like it. Right now, it's like it's not a mandatory thing. Like, okay, I did a half before. I was like, next thing is a full. Now I'm like, I did a half. I'm building a business. I don't need to like do all the training, 15 hours a week, 50 or 20 to do a full at this point. I can circle back to that later on, because I know I can do it.
I agree. You heard of you've heard of Lou Hollander?
Yes.
Yeah.
He's one of the oldest Ironman athletes. Yeah.
Right. I mean, did Kona up to 91, I
Is it
think.
91?
Yeah, before he decided that he was just going to train horses.
To
Well,
91.
yeah.
Okay, I thought it was that Japanese guy that was 86. That was the oldest.
Yeah, no. I didn't. Yeah, he didn't say he didn't. Oh, well, 86 now, but no. Lou did it till he was Lou. I think his last one he was 91, because he's like
I always had that in my mind. I'm thinking, 85. I've seen 85. Mid 80-year-olds do it. I'm 54, so I've got 30 years left to like do an Ironman if I want to. And I may build the business, have an exit.
Yeah.
And I get bored. I'll just do Ironman all over the world, just travel from one to another one. Those things all go through my head, right?
Yeah, there you go. I mean, you might be the next. You might be the next Iron Cowboy. I mean, who knows? But yeah, no. And then the Iron Nun was 96. She didn't she didn't finish in time, but she did so many of them that everybody went back out to go get her and bring her in. She ended up like 17:05 or something like that.
Yeah, she's awesome. I met her at a small race. We have a condo in Missouri, and she gave like the pre-race prayer. It was
Right.
cool.
Yeah. Yeah. No. Miranda Carfrey was always she was my workout wife in my head.
But she's got an
Um,
amazing run form for sure. Her run form
yeah.
is like top notch.
Oh, yeah, yeah. I mean, in the three that she won, she came out of the swim like last 25%, came off the bike top 25%, but not in front, and then would win.
And ran everybody down. Yep.
And then would run everybody down. She's great. I loved her to death. I met her a few times. And then I met, Tim O'Donnell, her husband,
Yeah, yeah.
a few times as well. He's a great guy. He's down to earth. Just so nice. He's great. But yeah, definitely you and I we can swap freaking Ironman stories from here until the end of time. But I'm really excited about your two books. And now you've got two more books that you're working on. You want to tease us a little bit?
Yeah, one of them is about medical device cybersecurity. It's more of like an in-depth guide because I'm building my brand, Blue Goat Cyber, and that's what we focus on. And I want to be a market leader this year and take over my competition. So that's one more way to do that, along with a podcast and webinar and other things we're doing. And then the other book is really about the story we tell ourselves. And if that story is holding us back or moving us forward, and how to change the story. And it's told through the lens of my own experiences, like, with blood clots, for instance, the story I told myself for a while was I'm grateful that I'm alive. Then the story became I'm feeling trapped. So it's a matter of like, how do I change that story? And that was a moment I decided to get rid of the blood thinners and say, you know what? Nobody cares about my life more than I do. So I'm going to reclaim it. That's the story I want to have. So yeah, that's what that book is about.
Okay, I cannot wait for that book. I cannot wait from that book. Matter of fact, we are going to talk after we finish this recording, and we're going to make sure we swap, and we're going to bring you back on after that one is published, and you and I will swap some more stories, and
Awesome.
give everybody a little bit more of an introduction to triathlon and endurance sports, and then we'll talk. Then I want to definitely talk to you about more about your mountain climbing and stuff as well. But I think this is a perfect time to wrap it up. We got the smartest person in the room. You can go get that on Amazon. You've got the in between, and is that on Amazon now too?
Yep, they're both on Amazon. They're on Audible as well. I had Kaleo Griffith. He narrated God of the War and one of Tim Ferriss's books, so he did the narration of my books as well.
Awesome. So
That's
that's
the Art of War, the Art of the Deal. Did I say the Art of
Art of
War?
Ordeal. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
No, that was Sun Tzu. So yeah. Um, so we'll have those links directly to the Amazon in the show notes, along with christianespinosa.com, which has all of those, plus of some great summaries and some YouTube introductions to the books as well, and some it looks like some testimonials as well. So you got to take a look at that. christianespinosa.com. We'll have that linked in the show notes. And then are you it looks like you're active on social media on just every platform. So I'll have all of that linked down in the show notes. And if you have any questions or anything, go ahead and slide into his DMs. That's okay, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Any questions on anything, slide into his DMs, get onto the website and contact him that way. But you got to get a hold of Christian if you're thinking about, changing your story emotionally, an emotional, uh, um, EQ, and triathlon, mountain climbing, free fall skydiving. If you got those questions, go ahead and give him a call, drop into his DMs, contact him. So Christian, thank you so much for joining us. And we are definitely doing a part two when that new book comes out, because I think that's going to be super important for everybody. We need to talk more about changing that story, so that keeps people back. We always talk about on this podcast that we're trying to help people level up, level up their lives, come back from adversity, level up. Now you've got the perfect example right here. Came back from 6 blood clots after being in the best shape of his life, and went through a year of hell and came back and is doing it again after, having a successful business and starting another one. So, Christian is, he's the Gary V of, he's what Gary V wishes he was. So, so anyway, thank you again, Christian, for joining us and speaking with us today. For the rest of you, thank you for listening. If you are watching on YouTube, please go ahead and hit that subscribe button, hit the like button if you like, and hit that alert button so you always know when we're dropping a new episode. If you're listening on Apple or Spotify, go ahead and leave us a review. And you know what? I don't even care if it's a bad review. It could be a bad review because it's going to show me how I can evolve the podcast to be even better than it is. So, but I appreciate you listening, and thank you, and we will see you